Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you're tuning in from, and welcome to day two of the 10th Annual Canadian Restaurant Investment and Leadership Summit. For those of you who are joining us again, welcome back. And for those who are joining us for the first time, my name is Jacob Mancini, and I am with CWB Franchise Finance, and we are your hosts for the event this week. I'm also going to be your virtual MC for today and for the balance of the week as well. Before we start, I do want to go through a few housekeeping items again, just to reiterate the way that you can participate in today's session. We do have an hour and 15 booked for today's panel discussion and some audience Q&A towards the end. You can submit questions over the course of the session by typing them into the question area of the control panel. Number two, today's session will be recorded and we will send out a link later this week, next week. As well, for those who weren't with us yesterday, later this afternoon, we will be sending another link out to download a copy of the 2020 Chain Restaurant Industry Review that contains a bunch of insight and data on the industry. And finally, at the end of today's presentation, we will have a quick survey that comes up and ask again that you take some time to provide some feedback on the event. Before we get started, I do want to recap again sort of, what we're doing here today and why we're doing it. As I mentioned, we've been hosting this event, the Canadian Restaurant Investment and Leadership Summit, since 2010. So this marks our 10th anniversary of the event. And things look a lot different this year than they have in the past, obviously. And, we aren't able to bring the industry together and engage and learn and network and catch up, to the same degree that we have before. But to that end, it was still really important for us to try to put something on to keep some conversation going and some learning going. And we decided to focus on 4 of our key sessions, our most popular sessions historically, and bring them to you over the series of this week. There are 2 more following today, and hope that you can, if you haven't already registered for them, please do so and join us. Before we start, I do want to take a moment to I say thank you again to our sponsors for their support and their participation in the summit this year. Our platinum sponsors are Chicken Farmers of Canada and Cisco. Our gold sponsor is Attitude Marketing, Castles, and Smooth Commerce. Our silver sponsors are Hub International, Dairy Farmers of Canada, Samsung, and Sodos. And our bronze sponsors are Foodbuy, Gaydon Contractors, and Lavazza. Again, also a special thanks to the NPD Group, who is our premier research sponsor, and a special thanks to fsSTRATEGY, who is the contributing sponsor for the industry review that you'll get a link for later on today. Finally, before we start, we're going to play a brief video from today's feature sponsor, Cisco Canada, about their Foodies Unite initiative. This is an initiative designed to support the industry and its people who fuel our love for the food.
Food. It's at the center of our table, the heart of our stories. It nurtures our lives. And somehow, it always tastes better when we share it with the ones we love. Food is the sticky, inspiring, memory-making glue that unites us when we need each other the most. So while we wait for a chance to take our place at the table again, it's time for us to unite and do good for the industry, for the people who fuel our love for food. Cisco believes that if we work together, we can unite to heal the food service industry, bringing us all back together, stronger than ever.
Great, thank you very much, Cisco. So let's dive into today's discussion, which is the CEO panel. And this is one that over the last few years has become one of our most popular sessions at the summit, and really a mainstay panel, first thing in the morning following the State of the Nation address. And we ask, each year we ask some leaders to join us and have for a candid conversation and to share their views on the industry. And given how extraordinary of a year this has been, I expect this conversation will be really valuable for everyone listening. So for that, I'm going to pass it over to our moderator for today, Ed Khediguian from CWB Franchise Finance, who's going to introduce our panelists and lead the discussion.
Thanks, Jacob, and thank you, Cisco. That was a great video. It is a real pleasure for me to have the opportunity to moderate today's CEO session with you. We'll hear from a panel of Canadian restaurant industry leaders that, like you, have been and are currently navigating this crazy environment. They are executives that represent various segments within the industry and across a number of geographic regions across Canada. And we're honored to have them participate and share their insights with us today. We'll conduct a bit of discussion across a number of topics that we kind of came together and discussed prior to the session. And timing and logistics permitting, we will go to questions from you, the audience, which you can submit through the GoTo app. So without further delay, let's get into this. With me today are Susan Senecal from A&W Food Services of Canada, Inc., PJ Lheureux from Craft Beer Market, Ken Otto from Redberry Restaurants, and Peter Fowler from Corp. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before we dive into the discussion, I'm wondering if I could ask each one of you to tell us a bit about yourselves, your backgrounds, your operations, and give us your impression of what the Canadian restaurant industry looks like from your perspective right now, and your immediate your outlook for as we head into the winter and beyond. What you think the outlook looks like? Maybe Susan, we can start with you.
Sure, thanks, Ed. Good day, everyone. So I've been with A&W Food Services for a long time, 28 years this year. 28 great years. I've had the opportunity to work in different areas of the business, which has been fantastic. In terms of the food service industry, obviously, a huge blow. There was a sense of fear, but the resilience of the industry continues to impress me. Obviously, different people, different concepts, different areas and regions have had different challenges. But what really stands out to me is the resilience, the ability to kind of pivot and transform ourselves. And I've seen that from restaurants in all walks of the industry, whether that's turning themselves into grocery stores or embracing delivery or whatever it took to navigate those waters through the summer and into the winter now.
Terrific. Peter, I have you on the screen beside Susan, so I'll why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, my fault for clicking too early. I screwed up the order. Anxious. Well, it's a challenging time for all of us, and I've been in the business a very long time, needless to say. And I find that we're all having to change our way and pivot, as Susan said, on how we're going to move forward in this environment. It is without question challenging.
Perfect. PJ, you're up next.
Hi, thanks for having me. PJ Leroux. I'm from Calgary, so West Coast, and my business is Craft Beer Market. So we've got a full-service restaurant that obviously has been very impacted by COVID, and we have a social environment too. So a double whammy on that side when we have restrictions across the country for the time of service as well. So yeah, it's been a challenging time for everyone. I think, when everyone says we're all in this together, I think everyone's got their own story of what's going on. But what I see moving forward is there's lots of innovation, both from concepts like ours, but also pivoting into, delivery, takeout, or fast casual kind of things coming out of full service restaurants. So I think there's a lot of innovation that's coming out of it, and I think there's going to be some good that we'll see out of this.
Great. We'll get a chance to discuss some of those innovations through this discussion. Ken, last but not least.
Right on. Thanks, Ed, and thanks everyone for joining us. Ken Otto. I work with Redberry Restaurants, so we are a large Burger King franchisee, just trying to be as big as Susan's company maybe one day. So we have 100+ Burger Kings and 20+ Pizza Huts in Alberta. And as everyone has said, there's no news stories about how challenging times are. hopefully we get to dive in today's chat about, you know, the industry and where we go ahead, and just some thoughts of how we kind of break through to, you know, open restaurants, I think be treated, you know, on the same basis as other retail. We've all, you know, I've certainly been dining out as much as I can, and have been impressed by the standards and all the protocols that, you know, restaurants have been implementing. And if I were to compare dining at a restaurant versus, you know, shopping at a home hardware store or going grocery shopping, I kind of feel safer in a restaurant. So I think we have an opportunity to share a voice and help spread the news, where the industry is going to need some help, but getting open is the best help we can give each other.
Yeah, that's a great point. You're absolutely right. I think the level of quality of the pivoting to safety is remarkable within the restaurant space, and I don't think necessarily municipal governments are getting that communication through or seeing the data through. So hoping to see some of that over the next couple of weeks as they're challenged with the economic need to open back up these businesses. That being said, you know, I've known all of you for many years, and I know the restaurant business is, you know, deep. You know, you're passionate about it. It's part of your fabric of your existence for many years. I mean, your full career, myself included. You know, I've been in the restaurant industry since my teens. So, what struck me with over the last 8 months is really the human element of this. You know, what is the long-term impact on talent in this industry, from, you know, line management to executive? How much attrition are we seeing, regrettable attrition within the business now? How are you experiencing that in terms of top talent? Maybe Susan, I don't know if you want to start and make a comment on that.
For sure. Well, I think, I mean, what really happens during any kind of crisis is people do pull together in a very different way. And obviously, I'll start with our restaurants. You know, when restaurants are closed and so on, you know, that could have been a big challenge to being able to keep talent. I think you said it earlier, Ed, you know, a lot of people who are in this industry, it's our passion, and nothing else really compares in the world to the speed and the sort of ability to keep responding to challenges as the restaurant industry. So we were fortunate to see, even though we have a large number of restaurants closed for a period of time, the vast majority of our talent back in our restaurants at a corporate level. We were fortunate again to be able to keep our talent here intact. I think the keys for me were really a lot of empathy is really needed, because everyone's leading their own personal as well as their work challenges. Everyone's leading their own personal struggles. Everyone has a different situation. And I think our ability to listen, and, you know, as a group of people, we're used to listening to guests and meeting them where they are. I think we've been able to meet our talent, you know, where it is, and being able to respond and create some direction. It's a world of uncertainty, and I think creating a little bit of certainty for people, being able to look forward, has been super helpful. So we've been fortunate, as I say, but I know that the industry itself has had some talent temporarily, hopefully, out of the industry that we hope to welcome back.
Yeah, terrific. No, PJ, I know, like, you know, we have varying concepts in different segments. Your concept, I'd say a big portion of the experience is the people, whether it be kind of management guiding, frontline. How are you dealing with, you know, retaining your top talent, and what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, obviously, like everyone, it's been a challenging time. I think what I've noticed mostly is people, something like this makes the world pause, and people in their career, it pauses as well. So there's been a lot of people that, you know, think about, is this something they really want to do? So the one thing that we realize is actually our people are better because of this, because you have that time to reflect and find out if it's something that you really want to do. So the people that are left, especially on the executive side, are you know, really in this for the long term. And the other thing that we've been able to do is attract people from other organizations that maybe were thinking differently, right? You know, it's a time where you can actually see how you were treated, or you know, reflect on the last parts of your career or where you were at. So that's been good on that side. As far as the hourly team members and you know, from our front servers, bartenders to the line cooks, you know, everyone has their own different situation of what's going on. We noticed a lot of people travel to get to our concept, which is strange because it's minimum wage, but because of what we do, they want to be there, and we lost some of them because, you know, they don't want to get on the train or they don't want to travel that far distance. So, you know, we've noticed things like that, but for the most part, our team is stuck together. And I think, you know, just through communication, through everything that's going on, whether there's a shutdown now or the shutdown back in March, or just the decline in sales, we're just being very as open and honest and as much communication as we can with our team.
That's a good point. Ken, you're one of the most positive and motivating people I've known over the years in the industry, and you always put a good spin on stuff. How are you motivating your team members? How are you, you know, looking at the next 6 months, 12 months in terms of retention and development?
Yeah, look, I mean, everyone, there's so many heroes out there. And I think, as all of us have said, and we'll touch on, the heroes in the store from the restaurant staff that, you know, took transit, came to stores, served our guests in all of our restaurants and all of yours, I mean, have to be acknowledged and rewarded. Rewarding thing we did do, you know, we did, you know, money talks sometimes, and despite all the motivation in the world, we handed out lots of bonus checks and had a wage premium like the grocery stores had for a while, and made a huge financial commitment, you know, we have over 3,000 folks on the payroll. So it was an investment that I think will pay off in the long run. One of the most interesting things we did that will continue for, I hope, forever, as long as I'm around, is we had coaching and mentoring groups set up at Redberry. So obviously, sometimes you take great people for granted, and everyone's working really hard. So we took this as an opportunity to accept people that wanted to help others and partnered folks together to help each other out. So as everyone has talked about, not only were people learning new ways to do their job, but they were learning new ways to run their life with their kids, school, and you name it, and working from home. So we thought, what better support group than a peer group of managers? So something we started was a support group, you know, taking people that wanted to lead, wanted to mentor, wanted to help, partnered them with folks that needed help. And, you know, we've never done that before. I haven't really seen it in industry where you have a peer level mentoring group. And I'm really hopeful that that could continue. It not only does it develop great leadership skills for those that are mentors or coaches, but, you know, people that, you know, may share things with the peer that, you know, they may not share with HR. So I think that's going to be a good outcome for us.
Interesting. So those are all for like kind of existing kind of talent and resources. Peter, any thoughts on what happens over a longer period of time relative to attraction of talent to the industry? Is there, because similar to PJ, your restaurant product is quite an experience that's integrated with the human capital. I mean, all restaurant businesses, obviously, but are you concerned over a longer period of time attracting talent? You know, previously, you know, some of us, you know, got into this business paying for school and evolved the passion for the industry. Has that kind of gone away? Do you see that going away? And what do we as an industry and executives in the industry have to start thinking about over the next kind of medium term to kind of communicate and create opportunities for younger talent that will come to replace us?
Well, I think it's critical for all of us to recognize that we have to change the way we ran our businesses. What Ken was talking about, we implemented right from the beginning of this a set of communication metrics where we had the senior team communicating on a daily basis, 15 to 20 people all on the phone every day at the same time. We started at the beginning of March. That has now traveled down to the restaurant level, where the concept leads are communicating with the RDs are communicating with the restaurants as a group. And it has changed the culture of the organization, and I think that will make us sharper, and I think we'll attract a more talented individual and challenge them. There's no question about our industry is going to be smaller from the number of people that we're going to be employing over time, because as a result of this, we've all had to make changes to how we run our restaurants. At the same time, however, I think that we're going to change our restaurants in a manner that attracts people who have more to give and can learn more and get involved with more decision making than they have had in the past. I think we've had a bit of a top-down perspective on this business, and I think it has to be more of a bottom-up perspective to attract the right kind of people that can actually influence the business going forward. Without question, shutting the restaurants on and off has been, without a question, a challenge.
Yeah.
Of major consequence.
Yeah. So you mentioned a smaller workforce. PJ, you talked about folks flowing to concepts and businesses and platforms that have been able to pivot and re-engineer to a certain extent. So is that the expectation is that seat supply, if you look at kind of supply in the industry, is expected to go down by 30 to 40%. The stats also are pointing to kind of 90% of that reduction in supply to be in that independent single unit mom and pop, which represents probably 50-55% of total supply. Now, do you agree with those closure rates? Do you agree with those concentrations? And are you seeing that currently? Start with you, PJ.
Sure. Yeah, I think I mean, everyone in every market, see the restaurants that are closing. We're all aware of the margins that we all work with, and some are better than others. If you have a few restaurants, everyone has a dog or one that's not performing as much as it should. And from an independent standpoint, it's an easy entry point to get a restaurant open for a lot of people. And they don't know the business of the restaurant industry sometimes when they get into it. So we're seeing a lot of that happen as well, where there's some really bad rent deals or deals that made sense 5 years ago that don't make sense now. So I do think you're going to see a lot of restaurants close, but I also think that brings opportunity. I mean, again, this business that we're in is very exciting for a lot of people, and we have lots of people in our organizations that want to open restaurants, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity that comes out of this. So I think it's going to be just a pause. I think it's going to be a year to 2 years where you're going to see a lot less seats, which is probably needed. It's something that should happen in our industry, but I do think there's going to be just as many opening once we get out of this.
Interesting. How about in the segments that you play? Are you seeing attrition in the independent space in exchange for kind of the branded chain QSR and pizza?
Yeah, look, I'd like to say that we're brilliant here at Redberry, but we're more lucky than anything else, I suppose, being in drive-through and delivery and takeout. So there's going to be a lot of pivoting in casual dining to get good at delivery, get good at pivoting into fast casual. But I really think across Canada, it's going to be very regional, and it's going to be survival of the fittest. I mean, all of us that have stores across the country, I mean, COVID's a big deal everywhere, but it's a really big deal the more urban you are. Quebec, Toronto, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver. There's a lot of regions where, restaurateurs continue to do very well. So I think it's going to be with kind of where you're located. For those in urban centers, it will be survival of who could, survive the winter. But I'm convinced that, people created the world that they wanted 6 months ago. Very social, restaurants, delivery, total dollars were all going up. It's going to come back. The industry, as everyone has said here today, there's so much innovation, so much pivoting, so much trying, so much creativity that we'll see a lot of very positive things. There will be closures for sure this winter, but over time, People are social and want to eat out, and for those people that are really connected with the guest, run great ops, it's going to come back.
Yeah, so with that supply reduction and more creative, being able to kind of pivot and re-engineer, what are some of those benefits, Susan? Do you see that in price, the ability to drive price or simplify menus? Where do you see the benefits? It might not be evident now, but 6, 12 months for the survivors.
Sure. A couple of things. I mean, I think the in terms of independent restaurants and the creativity and sort of the flexibility that independent restaurants offer has always been something. I mean, oftentimes you see an area of town that people would tell the story and say, 20 years ago, this was sort of not a very nice area of town, and then so-and-so opened their first restaurant there and it really transformed the area. I think there's that opportunity absolutely for independent operators who just bring their passion and their creativity. They create that moment, they create that place. So certainly I believe that we'll see that repeated over and over again, despite all of the challenges. In terms of, partnerships have never been more valuable, and I include their industry partnerships. I've talked more to people from different restaurants over the past 6 months than I probably had over the prior 2 years. It's just a time when I think sharing of information and trying to pull ourselves together with ideas and thoughts. Anytime the market turns topsy-turvy and we don't have answers, you got to look for answers everywhere. I think Peter and PJ said you look for answers among your employee base. They've got some ideas. They've got the space and the opportunity to bring things forward. And oftentimes their answers and their suggestions could be, way better, because experience right now doesn't count as much as innovation and a spirit of flexibility and trying things and pivoting and being nimble. All of those types of things I think have really huge value. And I think we've seen things that we never expected from consumers and from ourselves. And so I think I see that continuing. But from a perspective of, supply and landlord relationships and so on, I think this is a common issue that we're all facing. And so if traffic is lower in a place than it was before, I mean, that impacts the ability of tenants to pay. And ultimately, I'm a big believer in the market, and the marketplace will dictate, guests will dictate, where they're going to eat and how they're going to eat and so on. And all of those forces together, if we stay open to one another, I think we can all succeed together. I think if one or the other of the partners tries to pull a little bit more towards it, that's the kind of recipe for not such great success, because then it ends up with people making poor decisions for the short term when they could really be looking at a long-term partnership together.
Right. Now, Peter, you've got a particular kind of experience with where your stores are located. So your question of survival, I mean, obviously you've got some weight and strength and sophistication within your organization. How do you see the kind of closure versus the independence?
Well, I think everyone's fighting for their piece of the pie. I think what's critical at this point in time is getting the government at least to be consistent in how they deal with this, because right now I'm sure that everybody's facing the same challenge as we are. You don't know whether you're going to be open or closed, and it literally moves in a couple of days how that works. I think that the challenge for the independents is that they don't have the financial resources. Doesn't mean that we do either, but we do have associations and partners that we can draw on to. And I will say this, our partners, everything from suppliers to our landlords, have been very supportive of trying to get through the other end of this. And I think it's what doesn't break you makes you stronger. And this has been a unique time for all of us. I remember I started this business in the early 90s when the recession was on it, and we were able to do what other people weren't able to do because we weren't as big. This is an opportunity for independents to really move if they're good at what they do. The challenge for larger organizations like myself and Ken's, PJ's, and Susan's is how do you pivot quickly, and how do you create an organization that's able to pivot? So from my perspective, the way to survive this is by letting go of what you used to do in the past and adjusting to what you need to do in the future, and rely on your partners, as Susan said. You have no choice but to do so. Toronto is definitely, for sure, very challenging, as is Quebec. There's no question about it, because we're not getting consistent answers out of the government as to where we're going and what that road looks like, which only makes it more difficult. And for anybody that was on the ropes before this started, it would be extraordinarily challenging. So I am thankful for our partners, from our financial institutions all the way down to our landlords.
Great. Now, talking about landlords, maybe you can, is it consistent, your experience with the landlords across your systems, or is there some variety relative to responsiveness or the nature in which they've managed their relationships with you? Do you have any bad experiences? Is there any?
You can't have 60 restaurants without having some bad experiences. I will say this, however, that two things that took place. One, I think some of the smaller landlords became very aggressive very quickly. We did notify most of our landlords at the beginning of March that it wasn't looking good. So thank God we got out in front of it. Over time, all of the landlords have become more responsive, and we appreciate that. It has been challenging. We do have a couple of landlords, to be frank, who aren't particularly responsive. I will credit the larger landlords for working very effectively with us and trying to work our way through this, because they, at the end of the day, don't want a bunch of leases handed back to them either. I mean, an empty space is an empty space, and in a market like this, you'd rather have somebody in there and support them through this, because this is not forever. And I think that's what everybody has to realize, and we're all going to have to feel the pain. And I think that's the thing that we all have to come to terms with. The challenge, however, from our perspective, I think the federal government's having a conversation with it as we speak. We have not had clarity on any kind of rent support, particularly for any of the businesses like ours, which are multiple units, and we're larger than most, but we suffer the same problems. We have, instead of one restaurant, we have 60 in a variety of segments. And the other thing is they're not all being closed at the same time. We've got some open, some closed.
Yeah, they tabled some amendments and obviously some extensions to some of those, that subsidy program, as well as the labor subsidy program, but that hasn't translated into being put into operations. Have you heard anything, Ken, from any of your sources relative to any progress on that front?
No, I mean, we know that the old program didn't work because it put the power in the landlord's hands to do, well, all the heavy lifting. And if the goals of the landlord weren't very aligned with that of your tenant, the results didn't end well. So I mean, there's horror stories around that. I think all of us are aware that, yeah, the feds are, I think Pete's right, maybe even sitting down today and having a chat about how to do a rent subsidy program that is easier to implement, it's quicker, and puts the tenant a little bit more in control of the discussion, because that desperately needs to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the sense that I get is the bigger, more sophisticated you are, you're a bit more effective with dealing with kind of managing the government programs as well as managing your negotiations with your landlord. So it's no similar than other sectors. The stronger will get stronger, and the weaker will kind of get lost at the bottom. PJ, from a landlord perspective, you've got some kind of large spaces, so it's almost like that saying with if you're a banker statement, if you've got $500,000 exposed, you're not the problem, but if you've got that much exposure, then you suddenly become the bank's problem. So is it similar in the landlord space? You've got so much space that you've got some leverage?
Are you saying I'm in trouble, Ed?
No. I think you might be in a good position to.
Yeah, from a landlord perspective, my feeling is I'm a relationship guy, so I think I spent a lot of time looking for the sites personally and building relationships in the early going. So we've had a good response from most of our landlords. Some of the landlords are handcuffed, and as we know, sometimes your rent doesn't work with the subsidies. But as Peter said, most of the landlords have been pretty good. Everyone has a landlord that's not working as well, but my advice to people is just to continue to build those relationships, because again, from my perspective, what some of us, all of us have deals that might not make sense right now. You got to be talking to your landlords. This is not 2014, 15, 16 or whatnot. This is a new era. So there's deals out there that are now going to be in front of people that are better right beside you. You can't pay the same rent, so we've got to work through that with landlords. And as Peter said and Ken said, this is not going to be forever, but we got to at least short term work with the landlords to make sure these make sense.
Interesting. It's amazing how everything's intertwined, though, right? Like the business model for the landlord is dependent on his exposure. His exposure is dependent on his exposure with the bank. The bank's exposure is dependent on how the regulators deal with their exposure and impairment. So it's this. It's such a complex world of kind of putting these pieces together, and in the midst of it, you got to survive. So.
Well, the other thing is the landlords are small business owners too. So I think from my perspective, I understand that. I mean, there's big companies out there, but it's no different than big restaurant groups. So we have to understand that they're hurting too, and that's where the relationship comes in.
Yeah. One thing there's been, we mentioned it over the last half hour in snippets that of. There's been a tremendous amount of innovation on the part of concepts and operators, obviously pulling ideas either from your management to your staff. Are there standout examples in any of your businesses that you've observed, whether it be within your business or outside your business, that you might be applying currently or plan to apply? Start with you, Susan.
I think one of the pieces, as we sort of started to do some work on our strategy, one of the pieces that kind of had a big impact on me, and it's turned out to be pretty true and pretty accurate, is that where there's some new behaviors in terms of COVID. Those are the ones that probably will ebb and flow with the severity of the actual health pandemic itself. But there are other things that were already underway. So things like delivery and takeout and drive-through were already on an increase. The things like online shopping. One of the changes that kind of almost seems instant, but tap and pay, for example, today, if you don't have a tap credit card, there's a lot of places where you can't shop, period, end of story. And so a lot of those trends that were already in play and sort of really spiked during the pandemic, I think those are the ones that will last. And we've seen all kinds of them, which offers, there's always opportunity, and there's always, sort of change that's required when you see consumers changing. I don't think we've ever seen consumers changing their behavior so quickly ever in my recollection, or probably in our generation, where, overnight we suddenly saw people completely changing how they did things. And we've touched on sort of the fact that it's hard to get clarity. It's kind of like our crystal balls have been replaced by bowling balls. You can't really see that well into the future, and neither can consumers. So they're responding day to day to what they hear on the news, what they see others doing, and so on. And I just think that our industry has been uniquely great over a very long period of time at responding to changes in consumer behavior. And I think that's really the secret of all of the innovation, is to say, what's changed? What do people want? What do they value? And how do we manage to meet that expectation? And so that's resulted in different things. Like I said earlier, people that have become grocery stores. I saw there's a restaurant up the street here that started selling toilet paper early in the pandemic because they had like 12 cases, and of course their dining room was closed. And so it's small things, it's big things, but I think it's always with the desire to help make that guest's life just that little bit better. And if you can do that through changing your service format or your menu or your speed or any of those types of things, your contact amount, it really does work wonders in terms of their state of mind and their state of comfort. and our connection with them and our business as an overall industry.
Interesting. Now, Peter, obviously we were touched on the explosion of takeout and delivery. How do you? It seems like there's an unbundling of the restaurant experience. Going from pure in-store, primarily in-store experience that you have full control over, to one that once it leaves your store, there are the aggregators that are controlling kind of delivery. How are you looking forward on controlling that experience, or unbundling it but extending the brand to the different pieces of it, for delivery or the at home, display, packaging? Is there anything that you're thinking about in terms of that as you kind of think about your concepts?
Well, to layer on to what you said, the explosion of takeout was unbelievable. I mean, we were in the takeout business. We've been working on it for a year. We only had one of the agitators as one of our partners, as it were, when this started, and we quickly brought on 2 or 3 others. No doubt challenges with them. They have been helpful along the way, and we've moved miles with them to date. And I want to give credit to our teams, going from being a full service restaurant to a takeout restaurant. And I don't think anybody that was open for Mother's Day in the casual dinner house segment who did takeout that day, it was like a wall. And it's like one of those cathartic moments where you learn where all the holes are. Having said that, what I'm surprised about is how well we've been able to keep that takeout business and then bring back the full service business. So they seem to be operating separately. As far as the delivery side of things, there's no question that we have to get together as a group to try to deal with the third party delivery, because they for sure are taking advantage of the situation. I think they're more aware that they have to partner with us, but I think it's critical that we find ways and means of communicating effectively amongst ourselves to deal with them. On the front of product, we have limited our menus for takeout because they're so skewed, and some stuff doesn't travel for sure. We have also introduced some package meals, kits where you actually cook at home, and they're gaining popularity, and I see that opportunity going forward. We dabbled in everything. We dabbled in grocery, we dabbled in liquor, we've dabbled in everything. Some stuff works, some stuff doesn't. I think what's critical for all of us is to realize that you have to keep dabbling, because if you don't dabble, you don't learn, and you can't wait for somebody else to show you the way. And so I'd encourage anybody that is in the business and considering takeout, try. Just keep trying and keep trying different things till you find something that works. And communicate.
PJ, you probably went the furthest in terms of in-store to takeout. Do you see yourself shifting your footprint to accommodate that piece of the business going forward, or adding other elements, whether it be grocery or beer counters or whatever that is?
Yeah, like everyone, we've tried quite a few things. Ours is experience based, so we always have a hard time of trying to get the experience at home. This weekend we actually have our first virtual Beer Master dinner, so and it's sold extremely well. So we've got, and that's all Ontario based because the restaurants were closed. We decided to keep going with the promo, and I think you've got to do different things. We've got the liquor to go in the jurisdictions that we can do it. We've got growler service that we do. We've got 100 taps, so you can't get better beer selection than you can with us. So now you can take that to go or get it from a third party delivery. So those are working. And then continuing to innovate like cocktail kits, and we're launching next week a bake at home kind of single TV dinner style program. So again, like Peter said, trying different things that are gonna what's gonna stick and what's not gonna stick. But for us, it's trying to keep on brand, so really trying to keep that experience at home as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. How do you, yeah, what are the threats and opportunities on how to manage that brand equity through that process as it leaves your building, it leaves your people, your human resources that control that experience? How do you, where do you see the threats? What are the, apart from obviously there's packaging, but I guess your Masters series brings a face into the home in some
Yeah, sure. I mean,
manner.
some of the things that we did a Spotify list right away. I've got some good traction, you know, just things that people are used to inside the restaurant. But the other thing that I can say too is when the restaurants opened, for us especially, we didn't anticipate the numbers. I mean, it was really good. So I do think people crave that experience, and you know, again, we all know we're going to get out of this, and we got to make sure that we're ready for that. You know, we're not going to be a full delivery service company, but it is here to stay. So we're working on it in a very large way, and making sure that our package and our experience at home is there. And you know, virtual things are working, so people are jumping on them, and I think you can incorporate virtual with delivery.
Interesting. Susan, in the quick service space, are there you know, tech-related trends, whether technology application trends that you were trying to adopt, you know, gradually prior to this pandemic that you might be accelerating given the circumstances?
Yeah, for us, I mean, mobile is a great example that it was already underway, that, you know, it was growing in the world, but this really caused people to understand, oh, I need this, I want this. And that, so we saw a real high growth in mobile delivery and mobile order, you know, mobile app. I think the whole payment technology is kind of changed forever. You know, people are just, cash is way down on the list in terms of what we're seeing. So I think people have changed their habits that way. And, you know, PJ said it, and I think it's true for all concepts, is that people have a craving for entertainment. If you think about all of the dollars and hours that are taken out from cinemas and nightclubs, and, you know, just think about all the things that people did just to kind of add some pizzazz and some enjoyment to their lives in the pre-pandemic era. And a lot of those opportunities have gone away. And so, you know, when we did some focus groups and some talking to guests, you know, they'll say things like, we go to the drive-through just like to get out of the house, and it's a bit of an adventure for the kids. And so, you know, the typical drivers of our type of business, which was typically, you know, affordability and convenience and speed and all of those types of things, are still present. They're a little bit less important in an era where there's more work from home and so on. But just the idea of something a little bit different, a different taste, something I can't make at home, all of those kinds of things have really, I think, accelerated. And you see that in day parts, you know, with much more dinner and family business. You see that in, you know, just the way that people are interacting with restaurants and what they're looking for. So I think there's an opportunity for all food service to help feed that need for entertainment and interesting kinds of things.
Interesting. Ken, on your end?
Yeah, we've all read the same things that, you know, we've had 10 years of digital innovation in a matter of 6 months. So, you know, what Susan is saying is absolutely correct. And, you know, PJ and Peter, this is about every restaurateur, every hospitality industry has to now think of how do you extend your brand? And from a digital connection to convenience to what's happening at home. Probably like most folks, I think Jack Astor saved my butt for a Saturday or Sunday evening dinner for a bottle of wine when the liquor stores were closed. So I think that's a real advantage of, you know, the permissibility of alcohol around Canada. Like we've almost come out of the dark ages. You think about communities and how your restaurants are extending patios, and cities are embracing restaurants as a very, very important part of their culture. You know, and you know, it's really interesting what you said, Susan, how, you know, restaurants are, you know, can be the center of communities and are often the center of neighborhood revitalization. And we have to use that, the power we have now, because we may not have it again. While there is so many challenging things happening, there's opportunities before the industry to make permanent change to the industry that will be to everyone's benefit. But we all got to think about extending that brand and making that connection with guests and our public bodies that govern how we run our business over time.
So on that point, what would be for each of you, what would be the one thing that you think is absolutely essential, crucial for survival over in the medium term, and then in the long term? It could be the same or it could be different. Peter, we can start with you.
Well, first of all, I think it's imperative that the government actually agrees on how they're going to get through this, because at this juncture, every municipality, every city, every province has different rules and regulations. And so it makes it very challenging for an operator to be able to make decisions. You know, is my space between tables 6 feet, or is it 2 meters, or is it 2 meters between chairs? It changes from place to place. And so one of the challenges I think for us is for the governments to get themselves together and work together on what their restrictions are and how we're going to manage our way through it. I think to Ken's point, it's imperative that the industry itself finally has the ear of the public, and we need to work with that to make sure that they are aware of us. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had meetings with someone and said, we employ 5,500 people, and they're shocked. They have no idea that we employ that many people. They'll chase down a factory to produce something, but don't pay any heed to what we do. Going forward, I think that we just have to stay focused on getting out the other end of this and being agile. I think that's critical. To Susan's point, it's innovation, 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 and just being on top of our game and changing our culture. I can assure you that our culture has changed inside our organization for the positive. And I think each one of us has seen that happen as a result of this. You know, Ken, you suggested there's 6 years or 10 years worth of innovation in 6 months. It's happening in real time for us. So that's what we want to do.
Okay. Ken, how about you? What's that one thing that you think is the differentiating factor from survival for you?
Well, you know, Ed, we're lucky, right? So I think I'll pivot to speak of the industry, where, and Peter, you said, and we're all saying, we have a moment now between our industry, Restaurants Canada, the Canadian Franchise Association. We need to help governments understand that we've always been a very highly regulated, safe industry just by nature. I mean, restaurants have always been clean, have always been regulated, from alcohol service to food safety. So this is nothing new for us.
Yeah.
And I don't think the message is heard in terms of that, you know, a dining experience at any one of your restaurants or any one of mine, I would say is as safe, if not safer, when we all follow the protocols. And there needs to be a unified standard to help folks survive the winter. You know, who's kidding who? Winter's coming in Canada, maybe not so much in Vancouver, but you know, this idea of a winterized patio could only last so long. And we have to help the industry before that happens to get indoor dining going. And lastly, I'll pick on what Peter said is, you know, we have gotten way better and have had tough lessons of how to lead our people. And for aspects of some of our values and things that we thought we were doing to connect with people and thank our people and to communicate and share, we learned the hard way that we had to get better. So that's going to be an outcome, I think, for the industry, of the ability to listen to our leaders, listen to our staff, take care of them, make note of accomplishments, And that will be a long-term impact in the service industry at large, just how important these people are.
Yeah, 1.3 million employees. That's probably the largest employer of industries across Canada, right?
Yeah.
And the most regulated, and mostly amazing operators. I don't think the data necessarily of where transmission is happening is coming through to those making decisions on opening and closing different establishments. So you're right. I think communication has to get a bit more refined and to the right ears. So.
And look, you don't need government subsidies when you have guests. And
Right.
to PJ's point, when I dine out, it's busy, right? People trust us. So let's don't think they don't. I mean, there's always the picture of maybe an overcrowded something that makes the front page of the news, but 99.9% of restaurants are doing a great job. And if I'm an example, or my neighbors are an example, we want to go out and have a glass of wine and dinner.
Yep.
So let's take Canadians' money versus the government's.
Yeah, frankly, the demand's there. So it's just, you're shutting restaurants is shifting to people's homes in an unsanitary way, and that's what's driving transmission. So, you're not solving anything by closing these establishments that are professional and being able to manage that environment. PJ, how about yourself in terms of that one thing that you think is going to be crucial going forward?
I mean, I won't reiterate what everyone else has said, but for our organization, it's our people. So, I mean, there's going to be challenges moving through this, and we're a people business more so than a restaurant, and I got to just make sure that I take care of the people and make sure we have the right people, and continue to look for the right people, and take advantage of the market right now to get those right people. And that's going to be our mission as a company, to make sure that we're continue to develop our leaders and develop our people moving forward. And I think that'll be how we survive out of this.
Interesting. We talked about technology a little bit. I had read this article in the US. They're trying to deal with the aggregators by trying to capture data and through loyalty programs. Are any of you rolling out digitally based loyalty programs to capture some of the traffic that comes through the aggregators, or circumvents them at least to a certain extent from identifying the client?
Maybe I'll comment, Ed. I think for me, it's not so much about the data aggregation, but it's more about the connection with the guest. I think our benefit and our ability to respond really quickly has been just our direct connection. It's people talking to people every single day, thousands of people, millions of people, if you took the whole industry together. And so I think that what today's expectation, when I fill in a form on my computer and it asks me for my postal code, I feel like saying, you should know that. Like, I've typed in my postal code a bunch of times. I think the same thing's true for restaurants. People want to be recognized. They want to be reminded if they forget something that's usually on their order. They want to learn about new things. And I think that's increasingly true as the direct human connection might be diminished for some period of time. So the ability to get to know people through their faces and their voices and all those kinds of things is somewhat reduced. And so I think that technology can play a good role here, where we can really embrace the idea that our guests are expecting us to, if they order the same thing every day, they kind of want us to know that about them.
Yeah.
And anything we can do to build that connection and make it stronger is helpful.
Great. Terrific. We're close to 2. We're at 2 now. I'm just going to look at kind of the questions that came in from the audience, see if there's anything interesting. We addressed one of the first questions was, what is that one thing that you have to do for survival? We've talked about that. A second good question, this is directed to Ken and Susan. Consistency has always been such a key characteristic to franchising. With the quick pivots that have gone on throughout this pandemic, given the change in climate, how are you struggling with maintaining consistency across your franchise community and or Ken, in your case, you're effectively your management system. How do you ensure consistency? Is there anything different, or is it the same kind of protocol?
I'll start. We've all said it. It's the abundance of communication and pivoting of what your field team focuses on. So we've been very fortunate with the folks at Burger King, RBI, and Yum at Pizza Hut. That the standardized systems we had for ops metrics and food safety metrics and hygiene metrics, they're all still there, but they changed, right? So audits changed, communication channels changed. So what you measured simply changed. So I think that was an advantage we had. We had the likes of internationally based organizations, and our example would be the folks at RBI and Yum were experiencing COVID-19 impacts in Asia, weeks before we did. So we had probably some insights before other people did of what to expect. So that certainly was an advantage. But the pivoting was all just about spending hours and hours and hours on the phone, measuring different things and just moving really fast.
Yeah, I think communication is obviously a big piece of it, but I also think that, consumers have changed possibly forever in terms of sort of the attention. We sort of pay lip service to health and how important it is, but this was, I think, no one will ever again take, health and safety and cleanliness and all of those things for granted or take them in the same way ever again. I think this is something that will mark this multi-generational, population with a new awareness. I think it'll actually be good for public health because, it's easy to kind of take things for granted when you don't have to face up to some of the consequences. I think that we need to embrace as well those regional differences, those local differences, and be able to respond. I think what people are looking for is businesses and individuals who are doing what's right. And if that's the case, I think, that it's different in one restaurant or one region, or there's different dine-in restrictions. I think people are willing to understand and accept that because that's true in their lives too, with how they send their kids to school, with, where they're working from. Every part of their lives has been different from how it was before. And in some cases, two partners living in the same household have two different ways that their work is approaching work and all of those kinds of things. So I do think there's an openness that will remain, and we just need to embrace that.
Good point. I'm glad we got your sound back. A good question from a friend in Montreal. He writes, has the pandemic changed the long-term views on locations concerning concepts, dining versus takeout and real estate, size, urban versus suburban? So fundamentally, are you any of you looking at re-engineering the size of your stores, the footprint, the layout, and where you're putting it, urban versus suburban versus what you've done in the past? Open to comment from anybody, or go across the board.
I'll take that one and run with it for a little bit. I think all of that's a question. I think the change in working at home has changed where you're going to put your locations. It's going to change the hours of operation. I think the change in use of office space is going to impact that. I think that we're going to be forced to look at the size of our restaurants going forward and figuring out how to make them more efficient, but more energized as well. So all of those, every one of those things is up for question, and we're trying to get out to the other side of this to see what that looks like. But I'm sure that we're all faced with that same challenge. I have some very large restaurants like PJ in downtown Toronto, and there's nobody in downtown Toronto. And what's that going to look like a year from now? And is it going to be the same? And chances are it's not going to be the same. The fact that malls are challenged changes whether you're located near a mall. I mean, we've all seen shifts in how things change over time. This is so massive that we're going to be required to look at all those aspects. And one thing I did want to bring up that's so important is that our good people are the ones we're going to have to turn to.
Yep.
If it's from the server who takes the time to explain the health protocol that we're going through, to the person that delivers the food to the door, we have fewer opportunities for our people to interact with our guests, and we have to make sure that every one of them is absolutely fabulous. And you know, there's a little takeout coffee place that I drive through every day, and the woman who I order my tea from now knows my name, and I know her name. And it's that kind of glue that you want. And I think it's changed our environment, or changed the landscape going forward dramatically. To Ken and Susan and PJ's credit, we're all in the process of trying to maneuver our way through this.
Interesting. Susan, units, you saw Starbucks, they're doing just pure takeouts, like kiosks. Do you see yourself doing the same in A&Ws?
I
Something
think
similar?
Peter said earlier, you know, got to dabble in lots of things to find the right formula and to remain. I mean, why are we able to respond so quickly as an industry is because everyone's tried something on their menu, everyone's tried something in packaging. You know, there's lots of experiences out there. And so I think we're going to look at all of the possibilities. You know, we actually choose our locations based on who's there. So if there was lots of people at a university, we'd think that was a good location. If everyone's doing learning from home, that will change how we look at things, or the type of facility that we might want to open in that same location if it's a good one. So yeah, for sure.
Good. So we're close to end of time. So maybe one last, if there was one message of hope that you'd put in a bottle and kind of throw it into the ocean for that your future executives in this industry were to pick up and find, what would that message be? Maybe PJ, we can start with you and we can go across. I didn't give you a heads up for this, but
Sure. Yeah, I think, I mean, from my perspective, this is the industry I've grown up in, the industry I love. I love dining out. I love being out. I love the social atmosphere of it. It's going to come back. This is a blip. We got to get through it, and it will change. The industry will change forever. Some good and some different. But the social side of things is I believe going to be there for a long time, and we just got to embrace it when it comes back and make sure that we, like Peter said, we have the people that are there for the long haul, and they understand how we want to present things to our guests moving forward. People are going to crave that experience. We got to be ready for them and make sure that it's not just we can't take it for granted. Basically, we can't take for what we had for granted. We have to be ready for the future and deliver at 110% when that happens again.
Awesome. Ken?
I'll pick up what PJ said. I think it's you as an industry, it's going to come back because people love the socialization, the eating, entertainment factor of restaurants will be back. It's going to be painful to get there. But the lesson, I think, to any leader is be future ready all the time. This has taught us, like, it is amazing if you look at the world today of how much the world pivoted that quickly. And one could imagine if we could address other issues with the same tenacity and speed, we perhaps might be in a better place. So as leaders running a company, if you see a trend, if your gut tells you something about a trend, we can no longer wait. You have to just act on it, right? Be it digital, aggregators, dining trends, food trends. In this industry, if you wait, you're just going to die. If you feel it, change and be fast.
Awesome. Peter?
Well, I was going to start with Scotty beam me up, but that isn't an option. I think to what Ken and PJ said, I think that we have to take advantage of the situation. This is a great learning opportunity for all of us. It is a challenge for our people, but our best people are rising up, and they're feeling rewarded by the situation despite its challenges. And I think it's an opportunity for us to get our teams pull together to do things that are amazing. And so we'll come out of this optimistically.
Terrific. Susan, finally.
I'd say like leave lots of time for listening. We've heard the passion around the table here, and we're passionate restaurateurs. We need to listen with that passionate ear, and I think that's true for our teams, for our guests. And when we can listen with the right kind of ears, we can make the right kind of changes, and we can respond in the right kind of ways to what really I think people's discovery is, that we're an essential part of people's lives. And I don't think we were viewed that way quite the same way before. And I think understanding that and internalizing that offers some opportunity and a light for the future.
That's terrific. Well said. I think that, prior to this pandemic, there was this whole big culture trend push towards, the restaurant, the chef. There was there's so many great shows on Netflix. It was becoming part of the fabric. And I don't think that's a trend that will go away. I think it'll resurge over the next coming years, once, to your point, once things kind of stabilize and we pivot and find our ground, because it's the fabric of, this industry is the fabric of our community. So it's there's hope despite the despair. Well, PJ, Ken, Peter, Susan, I really appreciate you taking this time to participate in this panel. I hope everybody that's out there, unfortunately we're not live and we don't see them, and hopefully we'll be able to see them either next year or the year after that, but hopefully next year. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Back to you, Jacob.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Ed, and thanks everyone on the panel today. Just a reminder, there are 2 more sessions this week. If you haven't already done so, please register on our website for that, restaurantsummits.ca. So again, thanks, thank you, Susan, PJ, Ken, Peter, for joining us and providing your insights. Another thank you to our sponsors for their support of this event, and most importantly, thanks to the audience for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this session, and hope to see you back tomorrow and Thursday for the balance of the summit. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks.